Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. This is hilarious. Someone's trying to correct a mistake, and she was being rude. She made you $1,200 richer. Good on you, OP. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. You're sure it's mine? Fine, I'll keep it. This happened in 2014. I just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one, but didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime, so I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through to the next month, and I'd pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and got a new job shortly after. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent him a text and told him it was on the way and just assumed that was the end of it. Well, a week went by and he hadn't got it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay option because I hadn't used it before. So I asked him to just wait a few more days and see if it came. Several days later, it still hadn't gotten there, so I called the bank and asked them, and they told me I could stop payment on it for free, so I did. Then I just wrote a personal check and mailed it. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I got a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and asked them about it, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. At this point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing I'd tried to do a couple months before. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place because there was no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had actually made one. He had no idea what was going on because he hadn't used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google and finally it dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at that point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone auto-corrected it to Sandalwood, and it just happened to be the same numerical address. And because my father's name was listed as the payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account, so that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explain what had happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled, and we will not be talking about it again." Again, this is a recorded line. I asked if she was sure they owed me this money. She practically shouted, "Yes!" And I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my bank that day. They didn't try to call me back until about 6 weeks later. I'd been wondering how long it would take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was misinformed and she should go back and listen to the recorded calls that I had made to their office and gave her the dates. I'd been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check. And then I hung up. I haven't heard a single thing about it since then. Would love to see their faces when they listen to the recording. They might have to have a conversation with the lady that you had talked to. And our second story. Dad, 50-year-old male, gets mistaken for a band member. This story was told to me by my dad. Background: my dad is Hispanic and looks it. Dark skin, brown eyes, and a mustache. He also takes pride in his appearance, and he looks like a refined cowboy when he dresses up. Straw hat, neatly pressed button-up shirt, black jeans, and spit-shined boots. He's very social, and his work is his second family, so if there's a party, a convention, or any other kind of get-together, he'll be there. Story time. Pre-pandemic, my dad and his co-workers had checked into their hotel and decided to go to the lobby that had a taco bar set up for the guests. It had discounted margaritas, a live mariachi band for entertainment, and unlimited food, so it was perfect for my dad and his buddies to have dinner and relax after a long day. This was an informal gathering, so my dad was wearing his cowboy getup, and everyone who knew him knew who he was. He was milling around, making his rounds, and making sure to shake hands and talk to everyone there. At one point, he even went in line to the taco bar to have his dinner, and how he put it, a snooty woman who called herself the manager tapped him on the shoulder and started pestering him. K is Karen, and D is my dad. K. Excuse me, sir, this bar is only for the guests. D. I am a guest. K. Let me see your key pass. This bar is for guests only, not the band members. And this is where my dad started getting mad. D. Why should I show you my key pass? Why won't you look at my friend's key passes? He pointed to his other fair-skinned friends and called them out. Why are you picking out the Mexican in the line and not the other white guys? One other thing everyone knows about my dad is that he'll be nice only once, then he'll get in your face if you keep pushing him. My dad tried to be polite at first, but once that stubborn Karen manager would not let it go, my dad decided to escalate the situation. Once he didn't back down from this woman, she was the one who tried to apologize, but then my dad said the magic words, I want to talk to your supervisor. I want to talk to him about your conduct. The woman's supervisor was called, and even though the man tried to cover for her, my dad was already PO'd and was not going to go quietly. He accused the woman manager and the supervisor of being racially insensitive and kept asking why he was the only one being called out. Now, this was not the first time my father had been mistaken for a service worker, and he always believed in making the accuser so uncomfortable that they'll keep him in mind next time they wrongfully profile another person. Now he has the entire lobby and the rest of the guests listening in and most likely on his side, judging Karen and her supervisor. The supervisor was red in the face and was finding any way to de-escalate the situation. Finally, he apologized for the 50th time to my dad and asked if there was anything they could do to make this right. My dad seized this opportunity and said, in that case, I'd like to have my dinner at this taco bar for free, and I want my table to have free drinks all night. The supervisor was quick to jump at the chance to calm my dad down and satisfy the rest of the guests. My dad still tells the story, and even though he can get up on his high horse, this time it was warranted. My dad is and always will be the proud Hispanic cowboy who takes no crap from anyone, especially snooty Karens who run their mouths way too much. And our last story. Karen in HOA acts like a jerk and we get her to move away. I live in a city in the Northeast in a relatively small condo association, 6 units. It's surrounded by new construction, but this particular building is a very old 1850s mansion that was converted into condos back in the 1980s. Because of this, every unit is totally unique with different square footage and layouts. Important later. The jerk neighbor, let's call her Karen, was the daughter of the owner. She's also a has-been politician who was a former mayor of a small city in the state who lost re-election almost 10 years ago, but she mentions this all the time in emails and casual conversation. My former time as mayor, I'm very connected in the state, as you know, and on and on. Another neighbor, let's call her Rachel, decided to sell her unit. As part of this process, she made improvements on it and had contractors frequently. We have a back hallway that's required for contractors to access units, and a painter had left some minor things on the first floor as he was working. Jerk Karen apparently did have some connections because without asking my neighbor or talking to the contractor, she managed to get a city inspector to come right over who immediately fined the contractor for impeding access in the hallway, despite it being a small number of supplies. The contractor was so pissed he said he would never do another job in this building. Very annoying, as trusted contractors are hard to find. Karen did this because she likes to flex and is a jerk. Well, I spoke to Rachel before listing and I offered to buy it from her direct. We agreed on a price and avoided real estate agent fees, plus she just wanted a simple transaction as she already had a new house. I acquire the unit and start renting it out. Then another neighbor, Sarah, wants to sell. The real estate agent emails all the owners in the building and tells us about the open house. Well, it turns out Karen wasn't contacted because she's not an owner, and because of this, takes it upon herself to report the real estate agent to the State Board for Discrimination because Karen is black. Cue the real estate agent calling me in a panic, asking me to vouch for her in a disciplinary review, which I oblige. Absolutely insane behavior. The unit sells over asking. Everything's great as it's boosting the value of our units and the building. However, the buyer is insisting that the condo board signs off that all HOA fees are paid with a form that's submitted to the Registry of Deeds, which requires a valid condo board. Since Rachel moved out, there is no condo board. We've been derelict in our duties. We haven't had an association meeting in years, not a single valid trustee since Rachel moved away. I read the condo docs with a magnifying glass over and over. It turns out with my 2 units, my wife and myself can each represent 1 unit and have 52% of the voting power because our 2 units have 52% of the total square footage. Ours are each 3 bedrooms while the rest are 2 2-bedrooms and 1 1-bedroom. We have just slightly the max footage of the building and the majority beneficial interest, which effectively gives us full say over the building. As the sale process is happening, Karen's mother passes away from cancer, which she'd been fighting for years. Karen now becomes an owner as she inherits the unit. In order to be elected to the condo board, you need the majority of beneficial interest and at least 3 units to vote for you. We have 52% of the beneficial interest, but only 2 units, therefore 1 more unit has to agree. I get the owner who's selling and moving away to agree to vote for myself and my wife, and I vote for them in return. That gives quorum. We sign off on the condo fees, and then the seller resigns from the board promptly. Now only my wife and I are trustees. According to the strict reading of the condo docs, my wife and I now have de facto control of the board and never have to have another election because with beneficial interest 52%, we never have to approve anyone else, and even if everyone else votes, they can only get a maximum of 48%. In this situation, the remaining trustees can be the trustees indefinitely if there cannot be quorum achieved. Karen, throughout everything, has been protesting aggressively, accusing us of racism, despite my wife and I being Vietnamese, and sending legal threats. My lawyer's been countering everything, and there's no issue. Karen has now decided to sell and move away. It turns out she inherited $15,000 in unpaid condo dues that no one bothered to collect because we had no board and were disorganized that she'll have to pay in order to get approval to sell. Furthermore, all of her contractors doing work on the inherited unit have had to park far away because my wife and I have been very strict about hallways and driveway parking of vehicles impeding access, which is absolutely not allowed. We even got a van towed who was doing work on her unit because it impeded access. The tow truck works for the condo association rather than the city, so we could approve it as the trustees. If Karen hadn't been such a total jerk, we would have been totally reasonable about everything. But once she started bringing lawyers and inspectors and playing the racism angle, everything became war for us, and she lost. When one's driven out of the mayor's office, the political connections throughout the state grow wildly. When Karen's governor, you'll be sorry. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.